I'm right. Nick Durst here with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, I'm very excited for our guest today. Very well known name in the industry, and we've had a lot of guests on who have great connections with him as well.
Absolutely. He is one of the most accomplished sports broadcasters that we've had the privilege of being able to interview on this show. He's got over 30 years, 3 decades plus of experience doing sports broadcasting. He's previously worked for ESPN. Most notably, he's worked for Fox Sports for well over 20 years. And he is somebody who has been a part of some of the biggest events in all of sports. Done the Super Bowl, done the NBA Finals, done the World Series, the Final Four, the Daytona 500. Somebody we're really, really excited to have on. And it's a little difficult pinning him down for a time, but we did it. So without further ado, we would like to welcome Chris Myers to You Know I'm Right. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Well, thank you. That introduction and resume. I appreciate you guys being patient and working it out on the schedule. It's good to talk to you.
Chris, do you feel like you helped it all end the Joe Judge era in New York? I mean, your call on that third and 7 QB sneak from the 2-yard line was fantastic.
And we shouldn't laugh. I never like it when somebody loses their job, but for the Giants organization, the Giant fans, I think we could feel it coming. Daryl Johnston and I calling that last game of his coaching career, and probably the last touchdown by the Washington football team, as they will be getting their new name in February, new logo, new branding, whatever you want to call it. We had an interesting year calling a lot of different games with, Buccaneers and Bengals, and we ended with that one. It's always good to do a game in New York, because we had the Bucs earlier the week before with the Jets and the crazy Antonio Brown. But yeah, this was, you could see it coming. We had the Giants earlier in the year too, when they ran into the Dolphins, and there just was something lacking. You saw offensive coaches changed. Obviously, when your quarterback is injured, some of the draft moves they made, and even giving the money to Kenny Golladay as if he's a number one receiver. He's really a good receiver. I don't know if he's your lead guy. They just seemed like a group that wasn't ready to compete. And I feel bad for the Giant fans, and I know Daryl and I did, and for the players too, because the league, it's really been a while since they've been relevant. And I think the league is always better off when, the New York football teams are doing well, whether you root for them or against them.
Yeah, and between the Jets and the Giants, they are so far away from being competitive at this point. So it's going to be a while. But to you, Chris, we wanted to know, obviously everyone knows you're very accomplished, but what made you, really get into sports? What were your favorite teams and sports growing up?
Well, and I do want to say Zach Wilson impressed me in person.
He was great in that Bucs game. We were there too.
Yeah. And
we were sitting on the sideline when AB pulled off another one of his antics. We were 3 rows in. And he threw his glove very, very close to where Nick and I were sitting. So.
Oh, really? You guys? Okay. We would have put the cameras on. Yeah. I think. But I think there's hope. That's what I wanted to make. When you get a franchise quarterback, and I think Saleh's a terrific defensive coach, and we'll see where that team goes. But at least there's some hope there. And the Giants, I think, have big decisions to make with coaching and their future quarterback, and then some other things. But my interest, growing up as a kid, it's funny. My father he wasn't anti-sports, but he come from a big family. He always emphasized be aware of current events and history and that type of thing, and do well in school. And so sports is kind of an outlet for me. I wasn't really good playing. I was a backup quarterback. I was on the basketball team, but the sixth guy, that kind of stuff. But kind of, blessed with a voice from what people told me, and I wasn't interested in singing. So I kind of applied that. I would always just talk through and call games with my friends as if I was an announcer. And then I got into radio, called into a radio show, disguised my voice. I was Chris from Miami. Then I called in as Duke from North Miami so I could get on and talk more sports. And so they invited me down to the radio station and that kind of grew from there. I worked my way through college to get onto television. And I always liked sports and competing, but it was really the people in sports too. And I'm still fascinated by that, what makes them work and how they handle situations, whether it's Mahomes or Brady or a coach making a call. And so through the years, things have evolved from just what used to be a radio and network to now there's sports channels that are just dedicated to teams, to leagues. So it's in social media. It's a great time really to be a sports fan, to have a voice, to follow your team. So to me, as a fan at heart, and you become a journalist and you have to be impartial and you put all the work in, but you never lose that passion for sports and people. And so I've just been able to enjoy all the other changes along the way in the electronic media. So it's funny, I grew up in Miami. I went to school with Don Shula's kids, the Dolphins, but I was always wanting to live in LA. I just thought that would be a cool place to live. I'm not sure why Miami wasn't a bad place to grow up. And then when I got out here with ESPN, from also being in Connecticut and working there, things kind of grew. So I really have become a fan more of certain players and coaches. You're around them, and even if you don't root for that team, you kind of like them. So that kind of keeps a balance so that you're impartial when you call a game. But I am guilty. They always tease me up. Every game I call, I'm rooting for overtime or last. I just want the drama because I think that's the fun for both teams and those people watching.
Yeah, I was going to ask you briefly what the city of Miami means to you, because you went to, now forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, Chaminade High School.
Right.
You went to Miami-Dade Community College, and you hosted your own show from Miami's WKAT radio. So again, I just want to know what the city of Miami means to you. Sports-wise, recently, it's kind of been difficult down there. The only team that's really relevant right now is the Miami Heat. But you saw the Dolphins kind of make history this year, becoming the first team to win 8 in a row and then to lose. So what does the city mean to you?
Well, I mean, my hometown, but also when I was growing up there, it really didn't have the kind of franchises it has. It was mostly a football town, and really made up a lot of people from the Northeast, whether it was New York, New Jersey, that moved down there, that were visiting down there. So it's rare that usually people retire down there. I was born down there. So, but there's a good base, and I know because the weather's so great, you have beaches and fun things to do during the daytime. They're not thought of. It's kind of like the LA, the West Coast thing, where you're not the diehard sports fan like you're in Boston and Chicago, where you show up and cheer no matter what. So it means a lot too from a media standpoint. I thankfully, I went to a community college. We didn't have a lot of money, so I really couldn't afford to go to like the University of Miami to start out. But the community college was very hands-on to do broadcast work. I mean, we did our own production and writing. We had cameras back then. Now that's more commonplace at certain broadcast schools, and then that's how I was able to kind of go from there. So to me, it represents a lot of the roots in my life and in my business in terms of the broadcast business. So it'll always be close to me. But having traveled and been to so many other sports cities and observed, I think it certainly fits in as one of the top cities, and people always enjoy going there. But the TV station that I first worked for a local TV station at the time, they did a lot of big time coverage of certain events, and you'd have the Orange Bowl there or a Super Bowl would come down, and so you had a chance to do something. I remember doing radio. I left my algebra class at Chaminade High School in Hollywood, drove over to Fort Lauderdale baseball stadium where the Yankees used to play single A ball or their spring training, and I interviewed Roger Staubach and Terry Bradshaw playing in the Steeler-Cowboys Super Bowl, and then fed that interview up to New York and CBS Radio and Pat Summerall, who was doing a radio show, of course, the legendary announcer with John Madden. So those were the early years, and I connect those fondly with Miami and South Florida and Florida, the entire state, actually.
What was the process like for you to get the ESPN job, and then the process of moving up north?
Well, I was working locally in TV in Miami and then in New Orleans at a very powerful CBS station, WWL, which had really, New Orleans was the Saints, and they were just starting to kind of become a little bit more of a winning franchise. They weren't when I first got there, but LSU football was big, LSU basketball, those times. And they also, I fortunate that I could cover with them as a weekend anchor and reporter in my younger years. I could cover a Super Bowl or go to the Masters, or they would send me to the Kentucky Derby and try to find stories that connected to that area. And that's where I was spotted from ESPN and initially hired as a reporter in Los Angeles. In fact, the first really West Coast based reporter. I was in LA, Jimmy Roberts was in New York, and we kind of grew from there as ESPN was mostly a studio driven kind of operation. So it was an interesting transition. I was kind of settled into the local TV thing, but then all of a sudden this came and it was growing, and then was back in Connecticut for 4 or 5 years. Enjoyed my time in the studio where I worked with guys like Mike Tirico, people like Linda Cohn, Chris Berman, Dan Patrick, some really, especially Dan and Linda and Chris, really, really nice people, some good people behind the scenes that kind of grew up before Fox started to grow in in Los Angeles, and being a warm weather guy, I had an opportunity to go back. And what I liked about Fox was that ESPN was a little restrictive at the time with studio versus calling games or being remote. And with Fox, they were pretty open about, hey, you can do football or NASCAR, you can travel. So that the idea of doing a lot of different things appealed to me, and it's grown since. And that's why Fox Sports is, one of the premier in terms of live events. The ratings prove it, that they have the big events, and it's great to be a part of that.
Certainly huge, no doubt about it. Do you remember the first time in either of these jobs where somebody recognized you as, oh, there's Chris Myers from ESPN or Fox?
Yeah, well, it happened a little bit on a local basis, but yeah, it's funny. I was flying. My son had just been born. He was a year old. My wife and I were flying from Connecticut out to Los Angeles to shoot a promo commercial. I think Dan Patrick and I did the very first two that, hey, you're watching Sports Center, and then they did a lot. You see the funny ones, but anyway, my son was a year old, and we're cross country, and he just, obviously his ears, our inexperience with a baby, screaming on the plane. So the whole time, and I'm trying to walk and calm him down. I mean, and people were like offering, hey, does he need something? Can we help you? Can I walk the kid for you? And that's ironically when people were like, hey, you're that guy on Sports Center. We've seen you on ESPN. And I'm like, yeah, and I apologize for the screaming baby here, but they're like, no, we understand. So in that case, it kind of worked in my favor. That was in the very early years, and I recognized then the golden years, I call them, in the 90s, really, in early 2000, that those were the powerful years of ESPN, because there weren't any other 24-hour cable channel. There weren't the MLB network or the NFL network. It was ESPN or your local sports, and then of course the networks carrying the games. And Fox hadn't even begun. It was more mid 90s for them, and then they gained steam. So that was kind of nice, just to know that even if you were on at 2 a.m. doing a Sports Center, the people around the country, sports fans anyway, were watching.
Yeah, and with Fox, obviously you've done so many different events. Have you ever been approached by them and said, hey, I want you to cover this? And you're like, I'm unsure. I'm not really an expert in this, but you end up learning and doing it anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I filled in on a hockey. It's one thing I didn't really cover a lot. I mean, I've interviewed Gretzky as a reporter. There was some West Coast, but there was an event that probably not in terms of, let me think about it. When NASCAR came up and Fox got the rights and wanted to make it bigger, like the NFL, that big event. And I grew up mostly a football, baseball, basketball guy. My brothers were big racing guys. I have an older and younger brother, and they would drag me out with cars and drag racing and auto racing and NASCAR. And so when Fox asked me to do this, I kind of was like, well, I got to be honest with you guys. I could study it, and I've watched it. I've interviewed people from Dale Earnhardt to Jeff Gordon, whatever. But I mean, football, I know inside and out. It's been my life. This is different. And they said, no, we just want you to be the host and be your TV guy. We'll give you, as you would an analyst, right? For football or baseball, we'll give you a driver, a crew chief. And I had terrific people there, from Larry McReynolds to Darrell Waltrip, then later Jeff Gordon, Clint Boyer, whatever. So that was kind of a new, but I liked that because I'd done a lot of football and baseball, and it complemented after the football season for Fox, committing to that. And it's such a loyal audience and really good fans. And I saw that not only on a sports viewing level, but on a personal level through the years. So I really enjoyed kind of that experience. And I enjoyed early on the challenge of being involved in something like that. Then later always been a dog lover, but I did and still do the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show live from New York, and where they award Best in Show. And again, that's a little bit more. I've never been a dog trainer, or a dog groomer, but you learn a lot about something and treat it as a big event, which it is to the people watching, and you enjoy it. And so those have been interesting challenges, along with doing NFL, baseball, NBA, et cetera.
Like I said at the top, you've basically covered every major thing that there is to cover, and not a lot of people can say that. So Nick and I always ask this question with our guests. Towards the beginning, when we had a lot of guests on, it was kind of 50-50. As we've had more guests on, it's kind of leaned the other way. So we'll ask you, we always ask representation, right? Agent, manager. Do you personally have an agent? Have you had a manager? And if you do, has that person been helpful in assisting you in finding those opportunities, or presenting you with those opportunities for you to do those other things?
Yeah, it's an important question for people that want to be in this business. And when I've spoken for colleges or universities, junior colleges, high schools, broadcast groups that want to advance careers, I'm very careful because I think just like doctors and lawyers, there's a lot of good ones. There's a lot that aren't so good, and they might just take you on. But the most important thing, and yes, I think they can be very helpful. Depends where you are in your career, where you want to go. Some people are entrenched as a local sportscaster in Chicago or Iowa, and they like it there. They're happy. I enjoyed my time doing that, but I wanted to go to the network. That was always a goal of mine, and I think an agent is very helpful in that area. But nothing replaces your own hard work, your own contacts, your own visibility, your own results. And it used to be a tape, now certainly digitally, whatever you can put together to show what you could do, whether it's calling a game, interviewing athletes, reporting on the sidelines, depending, writing, if that's in your wheelhouse. So yeah, I have had through the years some good agents, some not so good ones. I will say that the one that I have is a guy who's created his own business and then joined a major agency, also represents Troy Aikman. So we were good friends, and that became, and I think it's important to, when you sit down with somebody, that they really understand you and they're honest about what they think of your ability. Hey, I think, this, I don't know that you can get to this, but you know what, you're better for this. And whether you agree with them or not, at least they're being honest. And if they're going to represent you, you need to have that connection. So yes, there are layers of agents. Sometimes it doesn't mean you have to have a big company, because you might get lost in the shuffle, but you don't want a guy who's a smaller representative who doesn't have the contacts with wherever it is you would like to go next, whether it's, calling games or reaching the network level.
Yeah, it certainly all depends on situation, timing, but I do agree with you that your own hard work is definitely going to make an impact big time, but the agent might be necessary sometimes for some networking. Now, Chris, we wanted to ask you, what is your I'm right moment in your career? And what I mean by that is a time where you were talking to somebody and you kind of said, I want to do this. This is where I'm looking to go. Somebody might have said to you, Chris, I don't think that's a good idea. You shouldn't do that. And you said, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway. And ultimately, you'll see why it is I'm right.
Well, that's interesting. There's a few of those along the way, and there's different layers. First, to get into a business to, show you belong. And I worked behind the scenes in radio and TV so that I could get on the air to do a call-in talk show as a teenager, and then anchor sports in Miami at age 20. And I have to say, you really, your hard work and your energy with people that are in your field, that helps, because you really do need some support for somebody to say, you can do this, or okay, I'll help you make a videotape that we can send in, or I'll help you make an audio tape so they can hear what you sound like on the radio, or you've worked so hard behind the scenes, all right, we'll let you fill in on the weekend. And that's kind of what happened with me. I had always enjoyed it so much. I didn't think about, am I going to get rich? Am I making enough money? I just thought, boy, I like talking sports, and I like people and covering sports. And so the different layers. So when I filled in on a call-in talk show and heard people where I used to call in and talk and get opinion, now I was the guy behind the microphone. They were calling in and asking my opinion, and there was just something magical about that. That kind of started it. So that was like, what, I'm gonna continue to do this, and I enjoyed it so much. And then with radio, it's just my nature of, well, okay, what's next? There's television. So when I got into TV, there's reporting, and I wanted to do it even on the local level at a high quality level, so that the network is really where the next people go. It's almost like if you're in single A ball, you got a double A, you got a triple A. I mean, and so was a natural. And I had really good jobs along the way and around good people, and probably could have stayed in that, but that was just my nature to do that. And then there was somebody in local TV who, it's funny, you try to TV. Radio's obviously you have to deliver the voice and have the information. TV, you have to have that, but there's a certain look. And somebody had told me I had a little scar on my forehead from when I was younger. Happened when I was running on the beach as a kid, and the sun kind of bleed. Anyway, the guy told me, he goes, we think a lot of you at TV, but we want to have that scar removed surgically or something. And I was like, well, I'm working here, but that's really kind of still who I am. I'm not, if you want to have surgery, that's your choice. It's your body. But that kind of pushed me, like, I'm going to show him. And I had somebody in college a professor in college say, I don't think you're going to get on TV with that scar in your head. Like, you're going to have to stay in radio your whole career. And so that pushed me even more, like, well, and I thought about that later, which it wasn't a single motivation, but it was like, don't let other people tell you what you can or can't do. It's okay if they want to guide you, but they shouldn't put restrictions. And so I thought about that. Well, I'll get on TV. There's always makeup or whatever. But that's who I am. And that motivated me a little bit more maybe than the average kid in college to kind of pursue television. So there are different moments along the way, but I will say, you got to have people who support you and help you. And I've had some people who said, hey, you can do this, or hey, would you help out over here? We like how hard you work. And that's always been kind of a special thing for me.
Well, I don't think the scar suggestion was good advice, because I think a lot of people actually like scars. I don't know.
Some people, yeah, I know. It's funny. In our era now, some people they put them in purposely for style. Right. I thought of Sidney Crawford's mole, and I was like, hey, wait a minute. That's who we are. Unless it's disturbing or upsetting, let's go with who we are. That's part of our personality. But that's a good point.
Absolutely. Chris, last question from me. You've covered every single event. And I know when you're in this business, everything is awe-inspiring, everything is so impressive, and the pageantry of everything. But for all the major events that you've covered, and I'm sure you have multiple events that stand out off the top of your head, but is there one particular moment or one particular instance where maybe you were covering an event and you were with somebody who you had always wanted to meet, or you were doing something that you always had wanted to do at one of these events? Is there one particular time throughout your entire career that kind of stands out above the rest? I know it's a difficult question to answer, but
no, there's a lot from chasing down Tom Brady in that Super Bowl on Fox, which is the network that carried it, getting to him after the 28-3 comeback against Atlanta, greatest comeback ever in a Super Bowl. Of course, now we're talking about the greatest quarterback ever. There's been so many, and I kind of use, that's my own motivation. And they tease me at work about, every night's the Super Bowl. I say that whether I'm doing a dog show, a NASCAR race, or an interview. To me, that's how it feels. And I still have that genuine kind of excitement. So the Super Bowls are always the starting point of great moments. And I've covered the Patriots losing to the Giants. Remember, the Patriots had that perfect season, and I had to interview. I was on that sideline. I had to interview Bill Belichick after a loss like that. So there's highs and lows. My interview with O.J. Simpson, I know if people go back and watch it on YouTube, it was live on Up Close on ESPN. It was the first live interview after both the wrongful death suit and the double murder trial where he was acquitted. And it was a very special, weird moment in terms of something like that stands out. But it really, through the years, it's just all the cool people I've been able to interview from Montana and Ali and Tyson and Elway and Brady and Kobe and Jordan. So, and they all have a place, and they register in my own head. I don't collect a lot of things, but mentally there's a Rolodex there with those people from back then to now. So that's probably what I hang on to more than an actual moment in an event. And I always look forward to the next moment. I don't know if the next game is going to have Antonio Brown ripping his shirt off or Joe Judge being let go after we call his final game. I mean, they're all still significant because they're coming up, but because that's what's next, kind of.
Of course, and Nick and I are still continuing to build our Rolodex, and we are fortunate that we can now add Chris Myers to this list. So Chris, we thank you for your time. We appreciate it. What we do here is we always give our guests the last word. So if there's anything else you would like to share, if there's anything else you would like to promote, we wish you the best moving forward. Hopefully we'll have the opportunity to meet you in person one day. So go right ahead, Chris. Thanks again for doing this with us.
Yeah, no, but thank you for having me on. I enjoyed your questions. I wish you guys a lot of luck anytime. We'll plan and organize if you want to get topical about certain things that are coming up. I have chrismyersports.com. It's a website that has some old interviews. I also put NFL notes, and of course on Instagram, it's Chris Myers Fox, which is a lot of fun, where we post things about what we're doing and the things I'm covering for Fox. So, and that's a nice way. Thankfully, now we have social media way to connect, which is, I think, how we connected, or I connected with you and Nick. So you guys keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll talk again.
All right. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it. So that's going to do here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our very special guest, Chris Myers, and my co-host, Joe Calabrese. I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.